In this video, I will continue the discussion on using natural light to make impactful portraits. I've tried to provide viewers with a wider range of options that they can draw on when they wish to make a portrait using natural light. Because different types of natural light can produce a wide variety of outcomes, it's important to first make choices about what your priorities are. Then use these decisions to guide your next choices that will include options such as using overcast or bright sun, being outside or inside, and whether you want warmer or a colder type of light. This video covers topics that include shooting in the shade, taking advantage of relative tonal values, using window lighting, which is sometimes referred to as Rembrandt lighting, making greater use of your tripod, mixed lighting, and extending natural light to include whatever light sources you have available. I will continue using actual examples of portraits that I've made either on commercial assignments or for my own projects. If you missed the first video, I'll include a link to the description below, as well as providing a click-through link towards the end of the video. Just because the light is non-directional does not mean the photograph has to be boring. Without all the worries about trying to control elements, you are free to explore a whole host of different options. With these portraits, there was no particular reason to add in environmental information, so I wanted to draw the viewer's attention to the subjects alone. They are interesting in and of themselves, and I don't have to try to be too clever with lighting. Using relative tonal values within a photograph creates a tension, and you can use this to draw the viewer's awareness towards the subject. It's a very simple technique in practice because you can usually find a doorway or an area where the light drops off sharply. The softly lit faces jump out at a viewer because they are surrounded by the dark background tones. If you find yourself in a space that has very little going for it, but you have a window, then you are in luck because you have access to the same light source that the great Dutch masters used in their paintings. It is mainly referred to as Rembrandt lighting, although it wasn't specific to him. He would place his subjects alongside a soft light source like a window and let the light wrap around the subject's face. There's a gradient or fading off of intensity as the light moves from the window side towards the far side. If you expose for the highlight, then you are allowing the light to fade off into a shadow. You can also increase drama by exposing for the shadow and letting the highlight spark in the background. You can also use backlighting to provide a sort of halo effect around hair or around the shape of the head. I usually try to isolate the subject against a fairly clear background. I found that by reducing clutter, I can attract attention to the nuances of the subject's expression. The falling off light provides a liveliness to the image, but not enough to distract from the subject as a person. Once you've placed your subject in position next to the window, you can then put all your attention into trying to reveal the character of the subject. There's always a temptation to try handheld low-light portraits because of the hassle factor. But my feeling is that if you have a tripod, then use it. It saved me from mediocrity on a number of occasions. If you are happy having your subject hold a fairly stationary pose, then with a tripod you can lock off the basic framing while adjusting aperture and speed. In this case, I was trapped in a corner and couldn't get my tripod up. You can see that because my aperture was wide open, the depth of field was minimal, and the subject's nose is now out of focus. This definitely weakens the end result. A lot of my personal work has involved portraits that have required long exposures. This is a series of portraits that were taken at the height of the AIDS crisis. And this particular area, Hlebisa, had an extremely high prevalence of orphans. A social worker and I visited the homes where the orphans lived, and once we were inside the hut or shack, the light was really low. So because I was using 400 ASA film in a medium format Hasselblad camera, without a tripod, I would be pushing the settings to the absolute edge. Also, I wanted to create a really relaxed, unthreatening environment, so I would lock off the camera and then engage directly with the children. A handheld shutter release cable also helped to diminish camera shake. Mixed light situations can be really tricky, but the results can also be interesting. A light meter would be a very useful tool for this kind of work because you can establish the light intensity from each separate source. Photographers are far less dependent on light meters now that digital has come onto the scene. In this portrait taken at a ferrochrome plant, the metal is being poured in the background, while an opening in the structure to my left of the subject allows natural light to fall on her body and face. The red molten metal radiates a very dramatic warm light onto the background, which transforms a very ugly environment into something interesting. So in this case, the mixed light has provided a very nice opportunity to create an interesting picture. This is another mixed lighting shot with full sunlight on the subject. This extension is not strictly natural light, but it explores situations in which you can use whatever light is available. These portraits were taken in different mining situations. The gold mine was the deepest at over 2 kilometers underground. Getting access to power was a real challenge, so I had to find a way to utilize the light that was available. There was often a mix of white, tungsten, and fluorescent light sources. So my approach was to find a place where one light source was dominant, as well as where the light was fairly diffuse, and then I would adjust my camera according to the dominant color cast. This is also not strictly a technique of natural lighting. Rather, it's an understanding that if you find yourself in a situation in which you don't have strobe lights available, you can still create opportunities to elevate a portrait above just a mugshot. If one is too focused on getting a particular look or feel, you can miss out on spontaneous ideas that emerge out of the environment around you. This can take on any number of forms. You can use the architecture of the building. Graphic shapes can hold the subject. Pieces of art can be used graphically or in a humorous or informative manner. Sometimes just a reflection can bring a spark to the image. In these examples, the actual light hitting the subject is fairly bland, but because the structural elements are providing visual interest, the viewer is not focused solely on the subject. I hope this video has been interesting and it's provided some insight into natural lighting techniques. If you haven't seen the first video on natural light, please click on the box which will soon appear above. I appreciate you watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Is it over yet?
Yes, it is good. It really is.
What are they?
Well,
and find out what the future holds in store.
Is it over yet?